Pretty cool. Here on Good Things, though, we like to get our party started. Not necessarily a concert, but we gather and fellowship over on the Good Things Facebook group. And coming up next, you're going to hear from the 18th annual, I think, Oxford Film Festival. So I thought it would be fun to have just a little fun on a Monday with a Would You Rather question. When it comes to films, we've kind of covered almost every logical question around films, especially when it comes to certain times of years or even characters, and you guys love your film entertainment for sure. So I thought we'd go a little bit different with it today and get you to choose. If you had to live, would you rather live in a magical fantasy universe like Lord of the Rings type thing, Narnia, that kind of, fairies and goblins and wizards and whatnots? Or would you rather live in an advanced technological universe like Star Trek was the first thing that came out of my fingertips, but all of the Star Wars lovers out there, pushed me under the bus or the little spaceship, so to speak. So you can do either Star Wars, Star Trek, whatever, that kind of mentality may be. But the point is you have to choose, and then you need to let us know why you pick one or the other. Remember, it's Good Things. We contemplate meaningless things here on the show that are silly, but hopefully give you a break from your everyday mundane thoughts. So 601-879-4395 to answer that question. You know what mine's going to be, Ryno. Lord of the Rings all the way. Put me in as a hobbit. I don't have to wear shoes.
This is one of the few times we actually agree.
So I'm curious, though, for your why. Me, I'm all mystical fantasy, love, all that, whatever, beautiful nature. Give me all that. But for you, I'm surprised you wouldn't want to be in your world of Star Wars.
Have you ever seen a main character or even a side character or really anybody in any of these advanced technology kind of worlds that has a big bushy beard? You've got a few that have like the clean-cut beard, but you have zero bushy beards in the high-tech futuristic worlds. So I just feel like I would be out of place, whereas I would fit right in with the dwarves.
Absolutely. You'd be a dwarf, I'd be a hobbit. It would be completely compatible. We would go on adventures together. But Wayne said advanced technology universe, they have bathrooms. Doesn't mean that people who live in Fantasyland doesn't take care of business, but you're right. It wouldn't be sort of the same way.
It's a fantasy world. You could magic it away.
You could magic it in a way. Robert says it would depend on my place in each of these societies. Thank you all who have really thought this question through, like Robert. I wouldn't want to be a slave in a galaxy far away or a low-level orc in Lord of the Rings. You got a point there, Randy. Being a low-level orc, if you have seen Lord of the Rings, would be a terrible existence. I don't know much about being a slave in a galaxy far, far away. But either way, there are different things that go on in both sort of sets of universes.
That's why Han and Chewie were so close to each other, is because Han saved Chewie from a life of slavery.
That's what you said, yes.
So Chewie owed him a life debt. And we had a couple people chime in about my comment about the fuzzy beard, Gib and Greenwood. Chewbacca, yeah, I'm not that hairy. If I could get that hairy, I would go with Star Wars. And then from the 662, Commander Riker from Star Trek, he had the clean-cut beard. I don't think I ever saw Commander Riker with a big bushy mountain man beard.
True story, and it's kind of a pause when you mentioned Chewbacca. Now, with real estate being the way that it is, there's actually a house for sale in central Mississippi, doesn't matter, but the realtor is getting creative, and she superimposed Chewbacca in the shower through one of her photos, which is kind of making that particular house go viral, which in and of itself is just kind of a fun and good thing for the day. But Boyd says lack of oxygen in space scares me. Too many things can go wrong. Although I like it better for the shows in terms of watching the Star Treks and Star Wars. But if you had to choose one to live in, I mean, you got to think some of these through, which is what you guys do absolutely great here on Good Things, is take these ridiculous questions and really think them through as if you are going to have to make a decision by the end of the show. I just love the wonder. It feels like there's more wonder and still adventure in like the Lord of the Rings sort of mystical fantasy world. I know it's a fantasy world, but your Star Trek and your Star Wars, they all seem doomsday and like cold, and everyone's, looking over their shoulder because they think they're going to die, or there's going to be a war in space. It just feels very high anxiety all the time. You're stuck on a ship the entire time. You never you never get off the ship unless you're
a landing party.
Yeah, unless you're on a...
And then you better check which color shirt you're wearing, because if it's red, you're in trouble.
Right. Don't know any... Yes, I don't know, but yes, it sounds very high anxiety, except for Jacob.
Speaking to the Trekkies.
Especially. But Jacob says Star Trek, science has rules, magic doesn't. Fair.
Yeah, that's the thing. With Lord of the Rings or Harry Potter or any of the high fantasy kind of magic worlds, you literally have carte blanche. You can make up anything and then justify it within those worlds. Whereas the sci-fi, the technology stuff, you can only get so far out ahead before somebody goes, I don't think we could do that.
And then we do it.
Yeah.
But there's that. Mike says Star Trek because the food looks better. I will give you that. Because most of them in the fantasy world, they're just carrying around stale loaf bread and enjoying a little bit or a feast here and there. But
unless you're a hobbit, because they enjoy the finer things in life.
This is true. But they have to go through a whole lot to get that big round table kind of meal. Like you almost die before you get to like have a protein and a starch. Or you just have leftover stale starch in your bed wrapped up in leaves, which doesn't sound very appetizing. There's trade-offs to both ways of living. But Tim says the food and modern conveniences has me choosing Star Trek. And when I'm running late, I always wished I could teleport to my destination. I never wished I could walk or ride a horse to get there, even late. You got a point. However, in a pinch, I've seen them soar on eagles, fly on dragons, all the other sort of modes of transportation that you can have in fantasy type worlds. I know Star Trek and Star Wars and Lord of the Rings come to mind, but what other movies fall into those categories of options? I know Narnia. What would sort of fall into the Harry Potter would go where? In the fantasy world?
Harry Potter would be in the fantasy worlds. There's a weird crossover here, actually, because you have Willow, which is high fantasy with magic and monsters and that kind of stuff, but it's made by the same people, George Lucas and Lucasfilm, that made Star Wars.
Ah.
Yeah.
Someone wants to know if I just compared Elvish, some kind of bread, to a stale loaf of bread. I have never eaten Elvish bread before, but it crunches on screen. And so any bread from where I come from that hasn't been toasted, that crunches, it's on the stale end of things. So.
Yeah, Limbus bread is supposed to be pretty nice.
Ah, well, there you go. Maybe I would enjoy it better than I
But eventually, if that's
would.
all you've got to eat, you would get tired of it.
This is true. Absolutely. Katie says fantasy all the way. I don't want to turn into a cyborg, but I would love to defeat a Balrog?
That's the big fiery guy with the whip that you shall not pass. That guy. Gandalf says that, but he says it to the Balrog.
And then he takes his sword and he does the whole boom.
Yeah, he takes his staff and breaks the bridge.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And the Balrog falls.
So if you had choice, staff or sword?
Oh, staff.
Yeah.
You can just hold that thing and it does all the work for you, whereas the sword, you got to swing it. And those battles, you see the battle, it starts in the daytime, then it gets nighttime, then it gets daytime again. That's a long time to be swinging a sword.
I've always thought that. They never stop for snacks. Like, nobody blows a horn and says, hey, just a 15-minute timeout break. Like, our glycogen needs to be refueled.
Or just the two guys, just hands on knees, just, hang on, I'll kill you next.
Or how the action shots always seem to have everybody dying around the two that are in conversation, but yet all the swords and all the things seem to just miss their heads.